Allow me to read. I'm going to say, I don't know it by heart, but what it says is, it's true that we're still under the imperialism domain, and they keep on wanting to expand it, and we don't know how much time we will have to endure this, and we will, because our revolutionary flag will never yield, because we will keep our head up strong. We will withstand whatever time it needs. We will undergo any sacrifice for the time that is required, because we assume our responsibility. Close quote. This is with the leadership that Fidel Castro said, September 28, in 1963, in the third year of the anniversary of the blockade. And the blockade was not going on too much. From this, it was 56 more years. And where are we now? The U.S. blockade on Cuba. This is what we're going to be speaking about today. Let's see more information, see a map, and as always, we have your critical thinking. Let's begin. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Bruno Rodriguez, presented on September 20th in the headquarters of the Foreign Affairs Office in Havana a document that exposed the need to put end to a blockade. This will be submitted, as always, to the consideration of the General Assembly of the United Nations on 6th and 7th of November. There has already been 56 years in which all of the countries that are represented are always voting in favor to stop the blockade, except for the U.S., Israel. In 2016, there was a historical voting because United States and Israel withdrew themselves from voting in this occasion. Then there was a meeting between the president and the president of the U.S., and there was going to be like a passing of this. The minister says now that the blockade is a violation of the people of Cuba, not only of those who live there, but also of the U.S. citizen. Let's hear a part of his speech in this summit that was a summit with international press. The blockade keeps on being the cause of the difficulties of our economy, of our needs, and everything that we lack, and the main obstacle to our development. Those who compare the blockade with other aspects, who attribute the problems of the Cuban economy, particularly those who are that are produced in these months, and they think that it's due to the incompetency of our government or inefficiency to the socialism. At the end of the long run, and by having a naive understanding or complicit to the government of the U.S. When we consulted the digital websites and how this blocking has become increasingly more serious, Esteban Morales, an international analyst, said the following. Currently, the government of Donald Trump has increased the measures of the blockade that have as an essential objective to affect the Cuban society, especially the economic of the society. Even those measures that are not direct on the economic measures, such as all of the money sending to the U.S., this goes directly to the families in Cuba. The rest of the measures that are also economic are aimed at affecting the possibility to have an international well-being. These are testimonies that have been gathered by our correspondent in Havana. The ministry has the need to import things through a third country. And by the time we get the medicines, the illnesses have already advanced. Nevertheless, we do everything possible so the patients receive everything possible. And with all alternatives, we have been able to reach a 60% of survival. Well, it has an impact because the United States represents the main market for Cuba in the world, and the possibility to go in and compete would mean an increasingly better situation for Cubans and for the Habanan Cubans, for the cigars, basically. Let's go to our map. 60 years of nonstop blockade. And they've been able to. There have been awful moments, but they've been able to. Cuba. Revolution, sovereignty, and resistance versus imperial blockade. It's a key piece in the world geopolitical and the board. 6 decades of revolution has survived. All of the aggressions exemplary in the continent. The USSR has strongly confronted the USA. They have not only seen historically like the backyard and to take over due to their geopolitical location, but also because they have to clean out everything that sounds like socialism and communism. So ever since the beginning of the revolution, they have had blockades systematic against their system. In October 7, 1962, John Kennedy formalized everything through the law of the foreign assistance that was vigilant since 1961. Ever since, it's been blockade of the U.S. on Cuba. This is what we're speaking of today. This blockade has been explained as genocide. In the first segment, we saw the main characteristics and the geostrategic location of Cuba, and how the Caribbean is regarded as to the opening door. And without the arrival of Trump, that policy of the U.S. has been much more aggressive and hostile. Some points that show this are the following. In the past months, Donald Trump has announced a $20,000 maximum of money coming in from the U.S., and they cannot send money to people of the Cuban party, as well as the more restrictions on the bank transactions that are transfers of money through banks of the U.S., but they do not start and do not end as the U.S. With the new restrictions, these could be vetoed by the banks. On June 5th, he also prohibited the cultural travels to Cuba. And the cruise that joined the U.S. to Cuba were also prohibited. The most popular way to go there are Americans. That's why this is a hard hit on Cuba. This goes along with the aggression against Venezuela, who also has a blockade. Their answer is that they have to block the tourism, and that makes their economy stronger. The aggressiveness of Trump increased when last week they said that the members of the Cuban delegation to the UN should leave the country. However, this has not happened, and it has also restricted the numbers of the people that can come from the Cuban delegation. Ever since April of 2017, there have been losses for more than $4 billion. This is one of the main reasons that explain that the crisis of food and gas. And just a week ago, the president of Cuba said that there was going to be some measures to save gas, because since there's the blockade, they don't have wide access. The blockade obligates the people of Cuba to be resilient and to adopt measures that allow them to overcome all of the lacks they go through. Just recently, the President Miguel Díaz-Canel announced new savings measures for the gas. This is to change the schedule for some activities, priority of diesel for public transportation, centralize the allocation of diesel to important sectors, and there will not be nobody will be able to just buy all they want. The president emphasized that in no way this is a new special period like that of the 90s, but it's urgent that they make face to the limitation they have. I think that with this and all of the pieces we saw before the pause, we have completed our panorama. Let's go now with our analysts. So I'm going to present them. From Panama, we have our first foreign analyst. He is of a diplomatic rank, and from Puerto Rico, we have Salvador Fernandez. He's an expert in human rights. Welcome, both of you. Let's start with Rafael. There is a combined pressure. On one side, something that we did not say, but we developed in a previous critical move. It's a U.S. aid trying to sabotage all of the cooperation. On the other hand, these new measures that the U.S. has adopted to make the blockade even far worse, the expulsion of the diplomats from the United Nations. Where do you find the explanation to all this? Thank you very much, Lucia. I am clear on something. The imperialism is decadent and led by Trump, who does not have clear concepts on what the diplomatic relations are. It's even worse than anything we expected. Cuba is fighting a hard struggle. When I was ambassador in Cuba, it was in the special period from the 1990 to the 1995. And that people knew exactly what it meant to resist and to have dignity. And all of the world admires Cuba for their dignity, and they resist and defend their principles, defend their ideological concepts, and what it is to have a better life, a better future for all of humanity. And on that occasion, I saw I think the signal fell. Well, no, we're back. Well, we saw how the people found a way to overcome. However, what the United States is the thing is that they're going through a crisis of their own, so they're afraid of their debacle. And additionally, they're afraid that there might be a new ideology, new principles, a new world, as a new world that one might be better, because capitalism that speaks about capital and socialism speaks about the social life of the human being, society. And this is how we see that the United States is almost abandoned. Europe doesn't agree. Middle East has problems. So what they do is, what Trump is doing is just a masquerade, just seeking his re-election in 2020. So these are the reasons that I see why to kick out the diplomats from the U.S. and put some restrictions on the delegation that cannot move from Manhattan, and of the concessions that the diplomat relations give. The worst thing that we see is that the United Nations headquarters is in the United States. It should just go to another country. They should go to a country, a more neutral country like Switzerland. So we think that the United States is in crisis, and they're just using their last cartridges. Well, this is Salvador. The immoral, as Fidel said, is that they're going to use their policy as a way to negotiate with Cuba. I would like your well, as my Panamanian friend said, there is a situation. There's a situation that affects Cuba, because what is at play is the life of these people.
O varias de las misiones, Misión Sucre, donde Cuba ha estado aportando con sus médicos como mejor pueda.
Because Cuba has been able to help out with their doctors.
Que pueden los Estados Unidos impedir eso, excepto cuando ellos sigan insistiendo.
They can keep on doing this, but they think that the Caribbean is part of them. Like they did in the Panama invasion in 1989. I wonder who they want to invade now. Like they did with Grenada. Like they did with Playa Girón in 1961. Well, it's a situation that also affects all of the aspects of the life of the Cuban people. Education, the essential materials for the medicines, to produce medicines. On the other hand, the American people can neither benefit from all of the discoveries that the Cuban medicine has done. It is also a way to keep Puerto Rico and Cuba unable to interact, to do anything with them. Well, it's the typical combination of divide and conquer. They think that the Caribbean belongs to them.
con sus actuaciones.
And this man
Toda la
has
vida,
tried
yo acabo de leerme en preparación para esta entrevista,
to do his entire life the
me
same
alegro de
thing.
habérmelo leído, el documento del Rex de Cuba,
I just read the VDREX
explicando el impacto que esto tiene en la
that
educación, en
explains
el deporte, en
the
el deporte. No
impact
tuvieron ni siquiera
on
cobrar los premios que se merecían por haber llegado segundo
sports,
al
on
torneo
every
de
type of
de
development
béisbol.
front.
Toda esta intervención que ellos están haciendo
All of this intervention
está claramente categorizada ahí y es que no hay aspecto de
is
la vida
clearly
que no
clearly
consiguen
affected.
la
There is
comida,
no way of
no
life
hay
that has been
combustible para
not
transportar,
affected. We don't have ways to get
no hay
food.
acceso a
There's
medicina
no access
esencial o a
to
procedimientos
basic
que puedan
medicine,
tener
basic
personas que
procedures.
están en los hospitales. Está afectada el acceso a la electricidad, que posiblemente
There's
se
no
va a
access
poner
to
peor
electricity,
todavía si
and
no
this is
siguen.
going to get worse
O sea, esta
apparently.
es una situación que además ellos están haciendo
This is a situation that they are doing
porque les está yendo mal,
because they're in a, they
les está yendo mal
themselves
fuera. Trump ha sido
are
un
in a bad
presidente,
situation.
aparte de que es un presidente forajido, es una persona
He's an awful president.
un individuo que posiblemente acabe en la cárcel.
He's a criminal who'll probably end up in jail
Los delitos que contra él
if they
pesan.
process all of the crimes against
Y
him that
ellos
are
entonces
charged.
están tratando de concentrarse, se les
And
está
so what they're
empezando a
doing is they're
caer
trying to
también
concentrate
las cosas que han podido montar en América Latina,
on something else.
porque la Argentina de Macri no se representa ya un aliado definitivo de
Because
ellos.
the
Bolsonaro en
Macri, the
Brasil
Argentina of
tampoco.
Macri, isn't
O sea,
part of
ellos
him.
mantienen a América Latina y a Puerto Rico en particular, por ejemplo. Nosotros somos los que le estamos supliendo la semilla a Brasil y Argentina
So
para la soya.
let's not forget that
Ellos
Cuba
quieren tener control sobre esto.
is
Yo estoy supuesto
is
a
producing the
estar ahora
seeds
en
for
la
the soy,
legislatura
but they don't
discutiendo
want
con
that
la
to happen.
una legislación de prohibición del glifosato por
What-
parte del gobierno en Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, on the other
Es
hand,
un
wants to
detalle,
prohibit
detalle que tiene que ver
the spreading
con
of
el hecho de que
glyphosato.
ellos son los que entienden que pueden
However,
asignar
they don't want to
roles
lose any control
a
over
todos los
anything.
países. Los que entienden que Venezuela no puede ejercer su soberanía.
Once again,
No
we have
puede decidir
Venezuela
vender el petróleo a quien se
who
lo puede
cannot
vender. Le han
who
intervenido
cannot
varias
exercise their rights.
a PDVSA para no poder
They can't
suplir
sell
las
their oil to
necesidades
whoever they
de
want.
petróleo en Cuba. Han obligado y forzado a que China se
They
retire
forced
con relación
China
a las posturas que había adoptado.
to
Ellos
withdraw
están
from their
llevando a cabo una
postures.
guerra. Bolton se acaba de irse.
Bolton
Era uno
has
de los
just
principales
left.
artífices.
He was
Pero
one
no
of the
es hoy,
main actors in
porque
this.
están los que
But this has not
históricamente se han
changed.
manifestado de esa manera. Claro, ¿cuánto le queda a esta dinámica?
What
Ya.
what do you think is left with all
Aprovecho
this?
esa pregunta, Salvador, para
With this
entonces
question,
conectar
let
con
me
una que está muy
connect
relacionada, que
to
tenía preparada para Rafael.
another one that is very related, and
Porque es
and
cierto,
had
no
prepared
es cosa que
for
solamente le esté
Rafael.
pasando a
Well, it's
Cuba,
true. It's not something that
le
is
pasa a
just
Venezuela,
affecting
Irán, a
Cuba,
China, a Puerto Rico.
Venezuela, Iran, Puerto
Hay quienes
Rico.
dicen, esta
There are those who
administración que
say
echó a desandar o que desandó ese acercamiento que se dio
that
en la
has
reciente de la última
that
gestión de
destroyed
Barack
all
Obama,
of
donde
the
hubo un reconocimiento de
approximation
hemos
that Barack
fracasado con
Obama
esta
did.
política unilateral de restricciones, de
And now
bloqueo,
with this
acabó
unilateral
aislada
blockade,
internacionalmente. ¿Qué piensa Rafael?
Cuba will be isolated from the world.
Bueno,
What do you think, Rafael?
internacionalmente,
Well, internationally, the U.S. is having a bad time.
La guerra en Irak
The war in Iraq
termina.
is not over yet.
La guerra en Libia no termina.
The war in Libya
La
is
guerra
also ongoing.
en Afganistán no termina.
The one in Afghanistan doesn't end either.
Siria sigue igual. Los problemas con Europa y
The
con
problems
Irán,
with
ahora
Europe and
mismo,
Iran,
Europa está en contra de los problemas
we see how they're
con Irán, que
escalating.
ellos hayan eliminado el asunto de nuclear. Entonces, Estados Unidos está ahora mismo en una situación
So the
muy
United
difícil,
States
muy,
is in
muy
a
difícil.
bad situation.
Además, en toda América Latina,
And
ellos
in
están
all of Latin
forzando, los
America,
países de América Latina los están forzando
they're
para que se
forcing the
declaren
countries
contra, Venezuela.
to declare
Tienen
themselves
problemas en
against
tienen
Venezuela.
problemas en Cuba,
They
tienen
have
problemas
trouble in
todos lados.
Cuba.
Ellos están en una crisis profunda.
They are in a profound
Estados Unidos está en
crisis.
una crisis
The United
profunda.
States is in a
El que no quiere
profound
verlo porque
crisis.
es ciego, chico.
They don't want to see
Pero,
just because they're
y
blind.
como ellos quieren seguir con su hegemonía,
But since they want to
todo esto
continue
es
their
ajuste
hegemony,
político para las elecciones,
además de su problema que tienen ellos interno. Tienen un problema interno profundo.
They have a serious
Un
internal problem,
social,
a social one.
cómo se están matando entre ellos
How
adentro
people
de
are
Estados
killing
Unidos,
themselves
cómo hay
within the
tiroteos en las
U.S.,
esquinas, cómo matan a los civiles
how they kill
sin
civilians
ninguna misericordia, me explico.
with
Ellos
no
tienen un
mercy.
problema social profundo porque el capitalismo
They have a
está en
profound
declive,
crisis
el capitalismo está derrumbando.
because capitalism
Pero
is
entienda
on
el
its way
mundo,
out.
que abran los ojos, que tienen que buscar un
They have to
sistema
open their
mejor que el
eyes
capitalismo, que
and
el
find a
socialismo.
better system than
Entonces
capitalism.
ellos le tienen, porque los que mandan en Estados Unidos es el
Because
establishment y
those
los
who
grandes
are at the
consorcios
top heads
económicos
of the
están
management
mandando sobre todo la economía y la política y todo en los Estados Unidos. Entonces ellos tienen miedo que se les acabe su poder.
So they're afraid that their power might end with a socialist system that is beneficial.
Para la sociedad y para los pobres. ¿Cómo matan
It is beneficial for the people.
cómo hay una discriminación racial con los negros en Estados Unidos tan fuerte?
Look how there's this discrimination against the black people.
Es una sociedad podrida, es una sociedad que
Well,
hacia
it's
afuera
a,
también
it's a rotten
salen sus
society.
malos olores, me explico. Por donde usted toque sale pus en
Wherever you touch it, there's
Es una
pus coming
sociedad que
out.
está en declive, que está
It's a
decadente.
society that's
No
decadent.
sé cómo los pueblos y entonces enajenados, es un pueblo que está desinformado totalmente.
So it's a land that is totally disinformed. The people in the U.S. are disinformed.
No tienen conocimiento de lo que está pasando.
They're not aware of what's going
Yo
on.
tengo que alabar al pueblo de Cuba, la dignidad
I have to
y el
speak
honor
up
que
for the
tiene que ser
people of
imitado
Cuba
por todo
because the
el
dignity
mundo.
and honor that they have.
Cuba es un país sumamente digno y honorable.
Cuba
Y hay
is
que
a dignified and
respetarlo
honorable
y
country,
hacerle la veña y seguirlo,
and we must vow to
seguirlo.
them.
Y entonces Estados Unidos tiene miedo
And the United
a
States
que
is
los pueblos
afraid
imiten la posición de Cuba.
that
Esa
the
es
people,
otra
that the
razón
other
por la
countries
cual
might
ellos
take
están
up
ahora mismo
the
tratando
posture.
de eliminar lo que es Nicaragua, lo que es Cuba,
Now
lo
they're
que
trying
es
to
Bolivia,
eliminate
lo que es
Cuba,
Bolivia,
Nicaragua,
porque son los
Bolivia,
países en los cuales los pueblos
because
han
these are the
despertado. Pero tengo la
countries
plena seguridad y la
that are
convicción
going
total
in that
que
direction.
más
But I am
temprano que
totally
tarde
sure
los
that if
pueblos
before
van a
than
despertar
late,
hacia una
the
nueva
people
sociedad,
will wake up to a
hacia
new
un nuevo
society.
mundo. Estoy totalmente seguro de eso.
I'm
Porque
totally
los
sure of
pueblos
that.
están cada vez más cultos y
Because the
cada vez
people are well
saben más
informed
la verdad de lo que está
and they know
sucediendo.
better
Y
what's
más con las
going
redes
on.
sociales. Las redes sociales nos han servido a nosotros para comunicar a los pueblos lo
And
que está
through
sucediendo.
social
Y en
networks,
realidad
we
ir
have
a la
been able
televisión, a
to
la radio
convey
y
our
a los
message.
periódicos, porque esos tienen dueños y dicen lo que los dueños quieren que se diga. Pero las redes sociales somos todos nosotros.
Because if we
Por
just
eso
listen
yo
to the
digo que
newspapers, they only
mi
answer
celular es un
to
AK que lo disparo
the
con
position of the
noticias
owners.
directamente de la verdad, para que los pueblos poco a poco vayan despertando.
We're only
Gracias,
interested in
Rafael. Le
conveying the
pregunto,
truth.
Salvador, me queda solo un minutito.
Salvador, I
con
only have
usted.
1
Usted está
minute.
invitado. Se aproxima esa sesión de Naciones Unidas
This
en la que se
session of
vota,
United
como
Nations
cada año,
is
el
upcoming.
proyecto de resolución
And
que
once
propone
again,
el gobierno de Cuba junto a su
the
pueblo para
government of
cesar el
Cuba
bloqueo.
will
De
present
forma
their
reiterada,
proposition
el
to lift
Conjunto
the
de
blockade.
Naciones ha votado en ese escenario, en ese espacio, a
And in
favor
this
de ese
sense,
proyecto que,
it has
repito,
been
propone
voted
Cuba.
in
No obstante,
favor.
nada pasa. ¿Cómo deja eso a Naciones Unidas en este
However,
entramado geopolítico
how
que
does
estamos
this leave
describiendo, que
United
debería tomar las
Nations?
medidas necesarias desde las instancias que tienen la potestad para hacerlo, pero no?
No, desgraciadamente,
Unfortunately,
las Naciones Unidas
United
solamente les sirven
Nations
a ellos para que ellos puedan afirmar algunas posiciones que de vez en cuando
is only
le
useful
aportan y de vez en
for
cuando
the
están de acuerdo
American
con ellos.
country.
Pero ellos hacen caso omiso de todas las resoluciones que ha
But
habido
they
para la
really don't
demonización de
care
Puerto Rico, para levantar el bloqueo de
of the
Cuba,
propositions to
para
lift the
tratar
blockades
con los países de la cuenca como países con dignidad,
and to treat these parents with these countries with dignity.
pero hay cambios que vienen.
But there are
Es
changes
difícil
that are
uno predecir
coming.
lo que vaya a pasar, pero yo no veo cómo es posible que
But
este señor
I really
Trump,
don't know how Mr. Trump
revalide en las elecciones de noviembre 2020.
will
Mientras tanto,
win
todo esto
again,
que están haciendo en la ONU no va a favorecerlos.
because it
La
won't
ONU
favor
va a
him everything
rechazar
that the United
las
Nations
movidas
is
que los
doing.
Estados Unidos están pretendiendo adelantar allí. Pero sí tiene razón el compañero
But
panameño
the
es
Panamanian
que es un
friend
pueblo muy desinformado.
is right in the fact that this is a
Y yo
country
sigo muy de
that is
cerca
very
lo que pasa en
disinformed.
Estados Unidos y sigo lo que dicen
And of
los
course, some
noticieros
people like I,
principales.
we
Y la
do
verdad
follow
es
up
que no
on
te
a
ponen
day-to-day
la
what's going
verdad
on.
con relación a la realidad de los pueblos de América Latina. Cuba, sin embargo, y en
Cuba,
esto reitero la
however,
opinión expresada por el compañero,
and this
ha
I
dado
must
y
say,
seguirá dando muestra
that
de
has
una
given
dignidad y de una capacidad de
signs
resistencia
of
y un
dignity,
sentido del valor propio que es admirable.
and I
Allí en
admire
diciembre,
their
Vanessa, me
attitude
invita
of them.
siempre a los norteamericanos, que voy a pasar el año nuevo y recibirlo allí con los números. Lucía, gracias por la invitación.
Thank you, Lucia, for your
este
invitation.
contacto con nosotros. Hasta un próximo enlace. Les despido
Until
a ambos,
our next connection.
de parte de todo el equipo
Thank
de
you
nuestro
very much to
multimedia.
both of you.
Bueno, fíjense ustedes, lo decía
Well,
Salvador, de que
Salvador already
hablaba
said
de
it,
las elecciones 2020, para terminar la idea. Y entonces nos preguntamos,
and he said, how is this process, this upcoming process in the U.S. could be useful to understand how much aggressiveness, why does he move his chips in this way? Let's go to a pause.
Bloqueo de Estados Unidos a Cuba, la geopolítica detrás de un genocidio sistemático. Vamos a escudriñar en un asunto que está relacionado al porqué, a las razones.
Why,
¿Es
the
meramente
reasons.
electoral? ¿Es de política exterior?
Is it because
o una
of foreign
combinación de
policy
ambos?
or of the
Esa
upcoming
política
election?
retrocedida. Vamos a ver.
Let's see.
Las últimas medidas que el presidente
The last
Donald
measures
Trump
that
ha
Donald
adoptado
Trump
contra
have
la isla
adopted
de Cuba
against
tienen
Cuba
claros objetivos de
have
política
clear
exterior
objectives of
vinculados a
foreign affairs.
Venezuela, pero también están influenciados por la campaña electoral
And
del
also
próximo
comes
año.
with,
El magnate de
it
Nueva
also is
York
tarnished by the
intenta asegurar
upcoming
triunfo en el
2020
estado de Florida,
elections,
que cuenta con
which
13
he
millones
wants
de
to
votantes
find
registrados
re-elections.
y alberga
And let's
sobre
not
todo en el
forget
sur
that
la
Cuba
mayoría de la población
has the
anticubana.
majority of
El estado de
the
Florida
Cuban
históricamente ha sido muy
citizens.
disputado entre demócratas y republicanos.
This land
Es
of
uno de los llamados swing
the
states
electors
o
of
estados
Florida
péndulo, ya que en
is
ellos
a
ninguno de
win
los dos
state
partidos
because
tradicionales tiene
none
la
of the
victoria
two
asegurada.
parties are
Florida
sure of
fue
having
decisivo
their
cuando George
elections
Bush
won
le
there.
ganó a Al Gore en 2000.
Let's not
Algo
forget
similar
when
ocurrió con Trump cuando superó a Hillary
when
Clinton.
George Bush
Sus
won
29
over
electores
Al
son
Gore.
decisivos para alcanzar los
And same thing
260
happened with Hillary
necesarios para
Clinton.
llegar a
The
la Casa
votes of these
Blanca,
states are
según opera
pivotal.
el sistema electoral de ese país. El voto hispano tiene
The
cada vez más
Hispanic vote
importancia
has
y es
more
decisivo.
importance and
En
is
Florida,
decisive. And
cerca de
Florida,
5 millones de
near
sus casi
5
20
million
millones de
people
habitantes son de origen hispano.
are of
El mayor
Hispanic
grupo es
descent.
el de los
The
cubanos,
major group is
mayormente
Cuban.
votantes del Partido Republicano y que suelen participar masivamente en las elecciones. Y allí su importancia.
It is them
Esta
who are the
política de
main
elección
people
se sustenta
who
en
vote.
las convicciones
So
ideológicas
this
de
is
Trump y del
this
Partido
lies
Republicano, que históricamente ha ido en
on the
contra de
convictions
cualquier
that the
proceso
Democratic Party
revolucionario
and the
que use
Republican
más
Party
esfuerzos en
are
la Casa
able to
Blanca
impose
y
on
desafíe la
the
doctrina del
electorate.
voto.
Bueno, prosigamos análisis.
Let's
junto a
continue
Iroel
with our
Sánchez, editor de la
analysis,
pupila Insomnio. Iroel, ¿cómo estás?
along with
Bienvenido
Mr.
nuevamente a la
Sanchez.
jugada
He's an
cívica de
author.
Telesur. Allí están las fichas en el tablero. Te pregunto,
I
¿la
ask
cuestión
you,
es electoral o va mucho más
is
allá
this
desde
just
tu visión?
electoral or does it go beyond?
Un saludo, Lucía. Buenas tardes.
Hi, Lucia. Greetings to you.
Como se explica, yo creo que tiene un componente
As it is
importantísimo
explained, I think there is a
electoral,
very
pero que se
strong
manifiesta en el hecho
electoral
de que por esas
component.
mismas razones de
But of course, for those
buscar
same reasons,
una victoria en el estado de la Florida con las personas que controlan ahí la política que históricamente han sido
and there we have
la derecha
the forces
cubana,
that
americana,
confront,
con métodos realmente mafiosos.
and there is some kind of a mafia there. And there has been an ultra right group and led by Marco Rubio. And not only him, it's all of the people with the staff, with his staff, and just recently ousted Mr. Bolton.
De las leyes contra Cuba en el Congreso como
and the person who is exposing the measures of the legislator by other people who have not even gone to the diplomatic school. And to this you can add the personalism of Trump and this ultra-right group, along with his personalism. However, this is a far cry from what Obama began to do. But he's also screwed up things in Iran and other processes in Latin America. And now there's this component of the this personality that is very well defined in the case of Trump. Now, do you think that Trump will win or lose on his next electoral adventure? And do you think that if that happens, it is possible to reestablish the road that had advanced to the normalization of the diplomatic situation? Well, I don't see it very clear. I really don't see it. You see a dispersion of the Democratic Party, the lack of a clear leadership. There's lots of people who are frustrated now with the Obama administration. These are the sectors that are closer to the left and that were decisive among the Latins and the Afro-American, and they feel discouraged because they discourage any improvement. However, there must be an agenda to mobilize these parts of the country that intelligently, what Trump has done is to use the Republican apparatus and then not really do what he had offered. I really don't see this clear how it's going on. We can't understand why Florida is still controlled by Republicans, regardless of the fact that most of the Cubans living in the United States and Cuba live there. However, it's still majoritarian. It was even so when the government of Obama, although Obama did attain a majority. If so, what's coming would be even worse. We were analyzing how the situation is getting worse, and not only against Cuba, it's against also Venezuela. I'm sorry, I did not hear. Can you please repeat? Anyways, what I would say is the fact that the United States sees Venezuela and Cuba as an aggression objective and to want to damage both countries comes from the fact that in 2015, Venezuela was called by the government of Venezuela as a threat to the United States. And while they negotiated with Cuba, these attacks were even worse. And now they want to hit their main allies. It's important to see that the process to going back to neoliberalism and then there were many other ways in many places like in Brazil and Paraguay, and after the triumph of Macri, the possibility to debilitate this imperialist policy that has been led by Trump relies on the fact that the people of Latin America find an alternative against the imperialism. Just like began to happen with the apparition of Hugo Chavez in 1997. We have to see what happens in October in Argentina and in Bolivia, and to see how the presence of the president in Mexico also stopped this aggression against Venezuela. And it also shows the United States fails. From January, when they gave the Venezuelan government an ultimatum. And they told them there was their last opportunity to go to the opposing ranks. And this didn't happen. Today, Nicolás Maduro is still leading the country. So, what they do is on the side of we have seen that the position is divided. Because some people want to lead Venezuela through the path of peace. And of course, we, the people of Latin America, need to have a more solid position. Thank you very much. Let's go to our conclusions based on everything we have spoken with our guests. With Rafael Salvador. Well, the seas is bigger, is very large. All of the aspects of the day-to-day life have been affected. And we had a list of all of the measures that have been adopted. However, if there is people who know about solidarity, resilience, sovereignty, these are the Cuban people. The reasons are that the United States think that our guests are passing through an economic and social debacle. And it's time for there to be a new world. This is the Monroe Doctrine. It is also a military strategy. But of course, this also has to do with Donald Trump's personality and the fact that he is running for re-election in 2020. We will continue analyzing this. Thank you very much for being with us.